Armbrust, and Karen asked me to talk to you all a little bit about insects, and specifically, where do they go in the fall? How do they make it through the winter? So, surviving the winter months is called overwintering, and insects do it in a lot of different ways and different places, and at all different points of their life cycle. I'm going to show you the two life cycles that insects follow. So the first one looks something like this. All insects start out as an egg, and in this case, what hatches out is called an immature. It looks a lot like the adult, except it's much smaller, obviously, and it doesn't have wings. So in order to grow bigger, insects have to shed their skin, and then they get a little bigger each time they do that. And in this life cycle, they do that a whole bunch of times, and they keep getting bigger, but they pretty much look the same each time until the last time that they shed their skin and they get wings then. And at that point, you know it's an adult, and you know it's not going to get any bigger than it is. Then the adults will mate and lay eggs, and the whole thing starts again. And the insects that follow this strategy include grasshoppers, crickets, stink bugs, praying mantises, and dragonflies. And those are just a few examples. There's a lot of insects that do this. The second life cycle, there we go, looks like this. So again, it starts out as an egg, but this time what comes out is called a larva, and it looks quite different than the adult. We call some of these caterpillars or maggots or grubs, depending on which kind of insect they're going to wind up being. So again, the larva to grow needs to shed its skin, and it'll do that several times. But then it sheds its skin and it becomes this really different creature called a pupa. And you may have seen these in the dirt when you're digging around in your yard. And you may have also heard of them as called chrysalis, which is what they're called when it's a butterfly. And they may or may not build a cocoon around themselves when they do that. And then, and you can kind of see the outline of legs and wings, but they don't move around. Pupa stay in one place. And then the pupa will shed its skin and come out as an adult. And you can see the list of insects that do this sort of life cycle, including moths and butterflies, beetles, flies, and the bees, wasps, and ants also do the same thing. So I wanted to go through and give you some examples of the insects that overwinter at each of those different life stages, using insects that you're familiar with. So let's start with the egg. Grasshoppers are a kind of insect that overwinters as an egg. So the adults lay their eggs in the soil in the fall, and the eggs stay there in the soil, resting all the way through the winter. And then as the temperatures rise in the spring, they hatch out and the little grasshoppers emerge, and they start feeding on the new spring plants that are growing up. Example of an insect that overwinters as an immature is a dragonfly. So we're used to seeing dragonflies as those big, showy, insects flying around ponds. But when they're immature, they're actually aquatic. They're in the water, and that's how they overwinter. They overwinter as immatures in the water, and they stay active all winter. They're predators, so they're eating other things like mayflies or stoneflies that are in the water as well. And even if the water freezes over, they're still able to stay active throughout the winter and then emerge as adults in the spring. An example of insects that overwinter as pupa would be moths. Most moths, they're caterpillars through the summer and they're eating plants. And then when it gets into the fall, they'll climb down the stems and go down to the ground, and they'll bury themselves under dry leaves, or in some cases burrow a little ways into the soil itself, where they'll make a cocoon and turn into a pupa. And they don't always make a cocoon to be a pupa in, but that's where they spend the winter there, protected by that layer of leaves or soil, keeping them from freezing. And then an example of an insect that overwinters as an adult are the ladybird beetles, or ladybugs as you might call them. And those ones hibernate often in big groups, and you'll find them, sometimes they come into people's houses, and you'll see a group of ladybugs all crowded up in the corner of your room, or in the corner of a window, or maybe out on your porch, but they've found a spot where they're protected from the weather, and they all kind of huddle together. And on warm days, they might get a little bit active, but they don't come and go. They just kind of stay there hibernating through the winter. So now that you know how some insects get through the winter and where they're at, you might encounter them when you're out in your yard. So you might find them in the leaf litter or in the soil if you're digging in the ground early in the spring before they emerge. Or if you're digging things up in the fall, you might find pupa in the ground. And when you do, I would encourage you to leave them where you find them. You might be tempted to take them inside and let them warm up, but that life cycle that they're following is very dependent on temperature, and you can have some unintended consequences if you throw them out of sync with the seasons. And my example, kind of a sad one, is I once found, a long time ago, found a praying mantis egg case, and I've got one here. I'm going to show you. And there, whoops, can we focus? There we go. They're pretty neat looking. Sometimes you'll find them stuck on a stem or on the side of a building. And so I found one, and I took it inside and I put it up on my mantelpiece. And unfortunately, in March, when it was still very cold out, and even snowy, a whole bunch of baby praying mantises hatched out when there was nothing for them to eat, nothing that I could feed them. And so they died, and I felt terrible, but I learned my lesson, and I don't do that anymore. So instead of trying to take the bugs inside or move them around, the best way to help them is to provide them with good habitat outside in your yard. And one way to do that would be to make sure that you don't clean up too well. Leave some dead leaves on the ground someplace. Leave some soil that will be undisturbed. Put mulch around your plants. So mulch being maybe straw or dead leaves or your grass clippings that have dried out a bit. If you kind of mound those up around the base of some of your trees and plants, it's good for the plants, and it's also good for the bugs. And you want bugs. You want them in your yard. You know, sometimes you think, oh, there's the bugs in my garden, they're eating my garden plants. But there's also the bugs that are helping you out, the ones that are maybe eating the harmful ones, and the ones that are pollinating your plants and giving you fruit and vegetables to eat. So you want the bugs around. So give them some habitat, and you can also even build them little bug houses. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to my daughter, TL, and she's going to talk about building some bug houses.
Hi, it's TL here with bug houses. Today I'm going to show you 3 different kinds. Here, first is the ladybug lean-to. It is very simple, probably the most simple of all of them.
So that's just a leaf with some sticks holding it in place.
Lots of things might take shelter in it. More than bugs. More than just bugs. Maybe even spiders.
Ah, excellent.
Which, my point is, they are arachnids, not bugs.
True. What's the second kind?
Hey, I saw an ant go under that.
We've already got an inhabitant.
This is the second. It's the everything bug house. A lot of crawling things, like that ant that just went in, will go in. Now I'll show you how to make it.
Okay.
So, you punch a hole in the leaf. I've got 2 here. This one was naturally punched. I'm going to use this one because it's stronger.
And what are you covering up there?
A little hole the size of my finger. You can dig it deeper or wider, but that just means you'll need a bigger
leaf.
Yeah.
Okay. And what do you put in the hole?
You fill it up about a quarter with crumbled dry leaves. Push that in. cover it with your leaf with the hole.
Mm-hmm.
Put the hole right over it.
Okay.
Take your sticks and punch them through the leaf into the ground. That's to keep it from blowing away in strong gusts of wind. You
Just
might
holding the
experience.
roof down.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Excellent. And what are some of the kinds of, what are some other bugs that might live in a house like that?
Slugs, earwigs, and ground beetles. I'm not so excited about the earwigs though.
Oh, well. I think Opal wants us to take care of all the critters, even the ones that freak us out a little bit.
They really freak me out.
What's the third kind of bug house?
The third kind is a bee house. It's really simple. I'm rethinking that thing when I said that was the simplest. This is just a flower pot and some dirt.
What do you do with the flower pot?
You put the flower pot upside down.
Mm-hmm.
The part that you usually put on the ground is up. Then you pile some dirt around the sides.
Mm-hmm.
And wait for the slugs or bees to move in.
Got it. So they'll go in the hole that's at the top and make their nest in there. That sounds good. All right.
Bye from me, TL, and Mom.
Thanks for listening and happy bug watching.
Yep. Good luck.
Bye-bye.